What I'd really like to do, just to set the scene with our panel today, is to just ask each of our colleagues in turn just to introduce themselves and where they work, and then just a very, very brief high-level description of something technology-related that you've been doing in your organisation. And that's partly to get me off the hook of trying to pronounce Nick's surname correctly. So I'd like to start with Nick, and we'll move along the panel. Thank you.
So I'm Nick Tsimogiannis, and I'm the Senior Comment Partner for Groupon. Something technology-wise, fairly, let's say, light touch. I've just started bugging on using predictive analytics, understanding past workforce or lifestyle facts, events, and how they can influence future workforce needs.
Okay, that's right. So predictive analytics. Thank you, Nick. And Tim?
Tim Goodchild, work for a company called Oath, which is a Verizon company, and is more the, you'll better know us as owners of brands such as AOL, Yahoo, Huffington Post, and so forth. In terms of our space and what we're working on, I mean, Oath is a combination of multiple mergers and acquisitions internationally. So we use lots of technology through various ways of communications and engagement with our employee bases all over the world.
Right, thank you very much indeed, Tim. So, Mili.
Thank you. I'm Mili Handa from the London Stock Exchange Group. We've been very much focused on innovation and technology solutions across a number of areas. Most recently, we're looking at and putting into place a technology solution around international assignees and mobility to provide instant access to not just the IAs, but to the HRBPs that are involved, as well as the business, in terms of the supplier initiation or the general movement of that employee.
Great. Thank you very much, Mili.
Hi, I'm Jeff Beggs. I'm Head of HR Operations and Reward at Channel 4. The challenge I have is that earlier this year we put in a new benefits platform, and equally at the same time we're now looking to put in a new HR reporting platform. The challenge I have is to make that platform edgy in terms of our DNA as an organisation. We present content to the UK in a very distinctive way, and my challenge is to present that content internally, again, in a very distinctive way.
Thank you, Jeff. And Megan.
Hi, I'm Megan O'Shaughnessy. I head up the reward function at Charlotte Tilbury. I think we've done quite a bit this year, but I think the most technological advance we've had is to increase and introduce pay grading across the whole global structure, which has been no mean feat.
Right. Thank you very much indeed. Now, one of the reasons I've asked everyone to just give a little bit of background to what they've been doing in their own companies is hopefully to start to spark some questions amongst yourselves, and just to explain a little bit about the breadth and depth of experience that we've got here on the stage. So do please continue using Slido and submit some questions to us, because we've got some time within this panel to ask some of your questions as well. But before we do that, I've got a few areas that I'd like to discuss with the panel, particularly talking a little to our title around AI and digital. And I guess we've seen quite a lot during the course of today about ways that technology and AI in particular can help to reshape what we do in reward and in HR more generally. But Jeff, I'm quite interested to start with you. We've talked about all the great things it can do. Are there any unintended consequences of what we're talking about?
Well, I think if we go back to basics, we're talking about artificial intelligence. So we're looking at raw data. So that's the artificial part of it. We're looking at intelligence. There's no doubt about it. We're seeing systems which are very, very smart, very, very clever. The problem and issue, I believe, is that taking that together, you still require to make smart decisions. And the smart decisions are not made by AI technology and platforms in itself. If we relied on that mantra, a little-known guy who, in 1986, was a lieutenant colonel in the Soviet Air Force, had 90 seconds in which to interpret data. And the data that was coming in was telling him that he was 90 seconds away from an all-out American nuclear attack on Russia. Now, that guy was probably a classic example of using intelligence, but then making a smart decision. And the smart decision was, we're here today. So I'm a great believer in technology, but also I'm a great believer in the fact that you need the human mind, you need the human instinct behind that to make well-informed decisions, and don't just rely on the data. If we relied on the data, we could have avoided maybe 2008, for example, because systems were being generated in financial services firms which told them to do certain things. If they'd actually looked at that data more carefully, we could have avoided maybe that quite significant step. So just recap, artificial intelligence, great. I think we're at what I call version 1. We're all using Windows 10 plus or whatever at the moment, so I think we're on a migration.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Jeff. And I guess something that kind of links in with that a little bit, Mili, but we've been thinking about is, we love the if only idea, but do we currently have the skills to do the if only?
I mean, I think we struggle. And I think from my experience, having been in Reward for 20 years, our demographics are changing. The people that we're bringing into the Reward function need to be data savvy, need to be not short of data scientists. If we're going to connect the dots, we have to get the right caliber. I think there's the resourcing issue, and then there's a technology issue, which is beyond that. What technology solution does tick all the boxes? We have large platforms like Workday, SAP, but they're all very modular, and there's not really a connectivity between them. So not only do you need a technology solution to do that, you need the people who have the mindset to go in and data mine and connect the dots.
Sure. And I know, Nick, I mean, have you got any thoughts around that? I guess it plays in a little bit to the predictive analytics that we were talking about earlier that you've been involved with.
It all I could just resonate with that. Is it on? Yeah. So I can resonate with both, because it is a combination of understanding AI, but the use of it, it's really in the hands of the person who actually created the tool or the system in first place. I had a really nice quote that fits in nicely here, and I won't take credit because obviously it's not mine, but he says that it's all about Dr. Frankenstein and not the monster. So it just fits, with the, it's still in the eyes of the beholder, really.
Yeah, sure, that's right. I mean, Mili, any other thoughts sort of around that?
I mean, I think from a resourcing perspective, big data is the heart of everything we're doing. And I think our teams are changing. We at the London Stock Exchange are now considering forming data teams that bring together reward teams, talent teams, people who are individuals within those functions that are focused on data, and pooling that together into a data lake, or whatever you want to call it. So just the big data piece of it is, and people think that big data is available in HR. I'm not sure it is. Big data is big data. I think we have very structured data in HR. There's definitely a connectivity issue beyond that, but I think getting the right people focused on this with the right technology solution is the solution.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting. One of the points that sort of come up in the conversations we had beforehand was, how do you make these systems benefit both the employees and the employer as well? What's in it for the reward professionals? I mean, Megan, perhaps you could give us some thoughts around that.
Yeah, I think for us, the biggest piece, and we've heard so much today about the people and the human and keeping it human, and I think we at Charlotte Tilbury kind of thought, actually, we don't know what our people want, and you can have focus groups and stuff like that, but it's all about like instant social, getting that feedback all the time. So we introduced survey tools, pulse surveys, because we didn't want to prescribe benefits. We didn't want to prescribe different ways of paying people, different pay structures and things like that. We actually wanted to listen to our employees. I think because we have so many retail employees, we were quite shocked at what we learned, because we thought we knew what they wanted, but actually we really didn't have a clue. And that then led us to kind of build the reward offering that we now have, and our EMPS has just shot through the roof because of it. And I think that's the key thing for us, is listening to the people. Like, don't just think because as we found out, we don't.
And I guess getting that further and kind of playing into one of the continuing themes today, which is about the future, knowing what you need to know today is one thing. How do you then extrapolate that out as to what the future needs are going to be?
I think it's a revolution, right? You have to keep going with it. And I think, surveys are today. And, do we go out to stores? Do we ask people what they want? We've ran some focus groups recently that we've done in a really different environment. So after masterclasses, which obviously feed to us because it's what we do. But for us, it's looking at what works now and actually who are coming into the business. We're looking at a completely different generation that are going to be working for us. I mean, most of our employees are about the age of 23, 24. So if that's what they are now, what's the next generation coming in? So it's about trying to tackle that as they're coming into the business rather than letting them come in and experience something that doesn't feel quite right.
Sure. And to what extent, perhaps I'll direct this one at Tim, does mobile play a part in this? Obviously, we're seeing massive, massive developments in the sort of mobile 5Gs down the way. How's that going to change things?
I think having gone to quite a few sessions today and spoken to a lot of vendors outside, I'd love to say that mobile isn't the future, but I think it pretty obviously is. I think what having spoken to particularly Capita and Towers Watson today, I think what's exciting is that lots of vendors are now seeing the importance of mobile technology, and we're seeing more and more apps, which even as recently as a couple of years ago, I was on at them saying, where's the mobile push coming? But, I was looking at my own phone earlier, and it's like I've got like 20 apps on my phone that's dedicated just to my job now. But I think what's important that we, whether it's through brokers or vendors that we liaise with on a reward basis, is all very well every vendor having their own app, but we need like a one central portal or one app for the company that everybody can go to, and everything is integrated within that. I don't think there's anything worse than going into an app, then you get a link that goes to a Chrome browser, which you then have to log in on. What's the point of that? So I think the push and I think the challenge is from our vendors and who we work with is we need one centralized app that employees can get most out of and get engagement from.
Sure, thank you. And just to say, I'm kind of trying to subtly blend questions that you're sending me through on Slido with other themes here. So do please keep those Slido questions coming, and I'm going to get through as many of them with the panel as we can. And so I'd like to just stick a little with that mobile theme and actually generally the automation that you're talking about, and just raise the spectre of GDPR, which has come up on one of the slides. To what extent have you found that GDPR has dictated what you do? I would like to select a random panellist who'd like to start with this.
I think from my perspective, I suppose the legislation is fresh, the experience of it is still fresh, and there's certainly a bit of nervousness because when you look into other legislations, and I'll use the US as an example, there's a lot more freedom in terms of access of data. And yet in the UK at the moment, I think we're generally paralysed because there's a fear of where are the boundaries in this? How far can we actually start looking over the shoulder of our employees? And I think I'm genuinely uncomfortable in that space because, are we seriously talking about monitoring every key action potentially that individual has on a company laptop or even their personal phone? Because that's where the technology takes us. So I think we're still in that area of defining accountability and responsibility. So I think there's a natural handbrake at the moment.
Sure.
I do think that we can provide all of these wonderful benefits. We can show the what maximum engagement of a new benefit or using AI or a chatbot, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, it's down to choice. I think an employee, if they are bought into it and the comms is right, and we show what the value is in the product, then it's down to the employee to make that decision to say, yes, you can have my data, and this is the reason this is what I'm going to get out of giving you that data.
Sure, and that's a really interesting balance, I think, that area around using data to generate choice, because I know one of the things that we've talked about a little, Nick, is AI is a great opportunity to personalise things. It's also a great opportunity to offer choice. So how do you get that balance between saying, here's the benefits that are good for you versus here's the choices for you to start with?
Yeah, so first of all, we just like to clarify that, AI, albeit it's already being implemented in many places and in many spaces, and it's in use, it's fairly limited yet. And the real essence of it's still not, or undiscovered. Therefore, I think there's yet an era where we'll discover its full potential, and full complexities. That's as an introduction to that. Having said all that, because it's been implemented, we have seen and research shows that AI plays a positive role in employee engagement with companies' benefits. And there's numerous ways where someone can feed information in an AI tool like a benefits chat box or a virtual benefit advisory system. For example, preload information based on empirical studies and data. But the beauty of AI is that it's interactive. So as the employee keys in more information, it becomes more powerful. The system becomes more skillful, clever, and therefore it is flexible. By no means I mean that we should take away what we're doing now, but we should complement it with what AI has to offer, because AI can offer market information, calculate the implications of a benefits decision-making process for employees, or present interdependencies that an employee may not have thought. So I think the balance is still in the hands of the employee, because we hold them accountable by, for example, understanding the benefits policies rather than just relying on the tool. So the preferences that they have, the understanding the policies, it's like almost holding them accountable for their own decisions, rather than putting that accountability to a tool. Therefore, the AI system works as a proactive, let's say, prompt, rather than a reactive reminder, really.
Sure, thank you. Thank you very much indeed for that. And so I think we're running a little bit short on time, but I think we've got time for a couple more questions. We've got one that's coming through that very much, Megan, has your name on it, quite literally, which is, what did your employees tell you that was surprising?
Well, I think working for Charlotte Tilbury, a lot of the surprises were from retail. They weren't from the head office traditional functions, because we kind of got it right there. What was coming out of retail was really about the recognition piece, because we just assumed that they would want, instant vouchers, e-cards saying thank you, you've done a great job, here's £10 voucher to go and spend on Amazon, etc., which works in our magic office, as we call it. What came back in the recognition space was actually that people come to work for our brand because of Charlotte, which obviously won't work for every single organisation here, but I think for us it's knowing why people come to work for you, and then harnessing that, because a lot of our employees were saying to us, well, actually, that's all great getting a £10 voucher, but actually we would love to come and hear Charlotte speak about how she contours, or how she, gets that feline flick correct, because that really is the essence of why they want to work for us, and they are the people that will eventually become the pro artists of the future that work for us. So we need to keep them engaged, keep them wanting more, and giving them a voucher for them is great, but it just wasn't why they wanted to come to work for us. So that was the biggest thing for us that we learnt, was actually just to take it back to basics, and actually they come to work for us because of who we are as a brand.
Sure, and that's really interesting. And just to open it up to the other panellists, to what extent do you feel you have that understanding of why people come to work for you? I mean, maybe, Mili, if that's something you could...
I mean, we've just finished our engagement survey, so we're waiting for the results around it. We're going through a bit of a period where we have a new CEO that has come on board, and so there's a bit of a shift around culture and a real focus on culture and behaviours. So I think probably now is not a great time to really assess what the benefits offering is and how appropriate it is. But we're looking at larger systemic issues across the organisation. But in terms of pulsing it, I think absolutely. We have put a few questions in there around benefit offerings and understanding that and incorporating that into our value-added proposition 100%.
Sure. And I think I'd also like to pick up on another point that Megan touched on there, which is around, do you think we can ever make the work data experience as good as the consumer experience? And one of the people who's asked a question has made the point that Amazon spend an absolute fortune on this. Are we really able to replicate that in the workplace? Perhaps, Tim, I'll start with you on that. Put you on the spot. There we go.
I don't know. I'll pass that over to somebody else. Sorry.
No, I think the reality is that when we're buying in systems, we're buying in a product, we're buying it under license. We're not developing it ourselves. There's only 4 or 5 companies globally who are doing their own stuff. And we talk about Amazon, but what's interesting about Amazon is that they spent 5 years developing an AI recruitment system, which last month they suspended and took down. because they had realised that unconsciously they were putting their, what I call unconscious bias. The organisation was actually recruiting in its own shape, but not necessarily recognising diversity. So I think that was a bit of a wake-up call to the whole AI debate, that there is a danger in developing these matrices in algorithms, that if you actually unconsciously put some bias into that, it can actually feed into hot-wired systems. So I think it's a wake-up call to all of us to just think these things through carefully.
Sure, that's really interesting. And sorry.
And I've seen for the last years, I've seen like a shift from buying off-the-shelf products to buying products that are more adaptable because they need to reflect the company's values and the culture. Otherwise, they're not going to sit well. Even if you find the most advanced kind of products, that's all very nice. But if you don't know how, or if they don't resonate with the workforce and the workforce culture, they're not set for success.
Sure. And I think that's a perfect note to end on here because it's all about the culture as much as it is about the data and anything else. And I think that pretty much sums up the theme of the day, going right back to Phil's slides right at the beginning, that it's about human values that sit alongside the technology. So thank you all very, very much indeed. Some great questions, and thank you for some great answers from my panelists. Thank you.